This press conference is going to focus exclusively on Ukraine. Given what's happening in Maidan Square in Kiev, we're going to have a live link in a few minutes. Mr. Verhofstadt will introduce. We've brought a few other guests onto the platform today. I'll leave the floor to Mr. Verhofstadt to explain who's who, and then we'll have a few words from the speakers and then a live link to Ukraine, and then we can have the floor to questions.
Thank you very much, Neil. So we focus this week on the situation in Ukraine, and it's obvious why, because in Kiev we have seen the biggest ever pro-European demonstration in the history of the European Union. We have never seen that inside the European Union. Fortunately, we see it outside the European Union, a whole population, a country that wants to join the European family. And whatever legitimate concerns Russia may have about trade agreements with its neighbors, it's clear that it is to the Ukrainian people within their sovereignty to make a choice on their own future. What we hope is that in the coming days, violence against peaceful demonstrations shall not prevail. And we condemn also yesterday's break-in into the headquarters of the main opposition party. What happened yesterday evening in the headquarters of the Motherlands Party. That is not acceptable in a democratic society. So the association agreement between the European Union and Ukraine has, in our opinion, to be signed. And I think that the possibilities for dialogue are certainly not exhausted and must be pursued in an inclusive manner. What we try to do with our political family, with the Alliance for Liberals and Democrats, we will ensure rotating visits of our member parties in Kiev to support the peaceful demonstrators and to support their demands and their requests. And we have here today two political parties of our family who are on a regular basis, I should say, there. Mr. Ostrevicius of the Liberal Movement of Lithuania, who went already a few times and has a close contact with the demonstrators, and Marielle de Cernès of our French delegation of MODEM, who was there last weekend. In Kiev. And I give them immediately the floor, and after that, after their remarks, we go live to the square, where we shall have a contact with one of the opposition leaders, Mr. Mykola Katerynchuk, who is the leader of the European Party of Ukraine. I think that's the name of the party says it all. A party, opposition party, who wants, with the other opposition parties, to join the European Union. So, Mr. Ostrevicius, I give you the floor.
Well, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, I think what we see now on the streets of Kiev and country around, since Euromaidan, it's not just a phenomenon for Kiev. I mean, the whole country raised up and made its reaction. Yanukovych made a historical and political mistake, not by signing the association agreement in Vilnius summit. And now we see a natural reaction of people who are fed up with the no-reformed country, with no movement, with no political freedoms up to the level Europe is expecting. And I believe what we see on the streets of Kiev, this is a new European Ukraine is born. And this is not about the stand-up between position and opposition. This is very much about the new course of a country. So that's why EU or association agreement with EU, it's a way out for Ukraine. More relations and closer relations with Russia is a way down for Ukraine. And people who feel this, who know that from their experience in Ukraine, living in non-reformed country, I mean, they came out on the streets and they made this very natural protests and demonstrations. So how we see the situation developing in Ukraine? I think we should make our strong reaction towards brutality of forces used against peaceful demonstrators. There is no way to continue this policy line. And we should insist of asking and demanding Yanukovych regime to release political prisoners, those young people beaten almost to death and then taken to the courts and being unconscious sentenced for 2 and 3 months to stay in prison. We have to demand immediate release of those political prisoners. Secondly, we can't isolate Yanukovych. We should engage him into dialogue with the European Union. We don't need another Belarus. We need continuous, strong commitment from Ukraine to proceed along with the Europeization of this country. There is no way another for Ukraine to develop. And finally, political solidarity. Those people on the streets of Ukraine, they are waiting for our signs of solidarity. And those who've been in Maidan and seen that reactions, I think they feel those thousands of hearts and heads of Ukrainians who are looking forward to our hands extended towards them. And we have no right to leave them alone. I think the call of ALDE towards brother and sister parties in Europe to bring representatives to Maidan, and I believe those demonstrations will stay still for long, since we felt this resolution of people to stay on streets as long as they need. I met many older people who came from different corners of Ukraine, and they said, we will be here on this cold street of Kiev as long as it will be needed. So we have to support those hopes of Ukrainians who are looking forward to European future of its own country. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. J'étais ce week-end, donc samedi et dimanche, à Kiev avec Nathalie Griesbeck. Je soutiens tout ce qui vient d'être dit, c'est tout à fait juste. Il y a plusieurs choses qui sont très frappantes. Le premier point, c'est que l'Ukraine est dans une situation extrêmement difficile. Pas seulement sur le plan politique, mais sur le plan économique. Que son économie va à volo, que les 10 années pendant lesquelles ce pays n'a quasiment pas payé le gaz n'ont pas été mises à profit pour avancer, pour moderniser.
For their gas, they've not had to pay for their gas, but they haven't taken advantage of that to make progress in agriculture, for example, massive agriculture sector, brilliant mining resources, but it's really not going well, the economy.
Comme un levier de modernisation pour ce pays, pour
is seen as a lever for modernisation, a way of achieving growth,
qui en ont besoin.
A way of
Et c'est vu aussi comme un levier de modernisation pour tout ce qui touche aux libertés publiques. Nous sommes dans un régime en Ukraine qui est tout à fait autoritaire et qui est à la limite de basculer sur l'atteinte aux libertés. Nous avons rencontré le comité des victimes du 30 novembre, qui sont tous ces jeunes étudiants qui étaient là d'une manière absolument pacifiste, qui ont été brutalisés, qui sont aujourd'hui à l'hôpital. Nous avons vu leur famille ne peut pas les voir. Donc je lance vraiment là-dessus un appel pour une mobilisation pour pouvoir évidemment que ces jeunes soient rencontrés, qu'ils ne puissent pas rester comme ça à
ensure that these young people are not left that way in hospital, isolated from their families or in prison.
Très très forte.
Europe really has to be incredibly vigilant about this situation. People talk always about the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine and the other section of the Ukraine being more turned to Europe. But we have to say that 70% of Ukrainians, according to polls, want to get closer to the European Union, to have a closer association with us. That's very important. And in the Russian-speaking part, 50% of people there who have been polled want to have a closer relationship with Europe. So as European politicians, we have to hear that message. We have to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. I was in Kiev in 2004. At that time, there were the orange flags for the revolution and the blue flags for those who didn't want the revolution. Now there are two flags in Kiev. There's the Ukrainian flag, but there's also the European flag. Those were the two flags which were being carried by all the demonstrators at the demo on Saturday and Sunday. Just think about that. So I just finished by saying that Europe has to be very vigilant here. There's a severe risk that there will be further radicalization. There's a severe risk that things will go
go completely awry in terms of infringement of civil liberties. There's been talk about introducing a state of emergency. There will be elections in 2015, but the people in power will do everything they can to muzzle the opposition, to the Ukrainians in general, to crack down on them. So Europe is going to have to keep a very close eye on things. That's our responsibility here as politicians.
Thank you.
Thank
we
you
can go
very much,
maybe
Maria.
now to the... Is Mikola there? I saw him.
Доброго дня, мене чути?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Mikola, you hear me?
Перш за все, я хотів подякувати.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all colleagues that have helped us immediately on the 30th of November. There was a resolution that was taken at that date, and the very next day I read this resolution to 500,000 people who were at the meeting. So they all heard about ALDE and your position. They know that you are against a violent scenario, and people believe that Europe is with us, that Europe will not allow people to be beaten up. And for the time being, it is still possible to maintain the situation as such and to forego a forceful solution. Every day on the Maidan, you know that the temperature is falling. It's -5. Now it'll be -16. Tomorrow there are lots of people on the Maidan, but you know that the militia is now blocking the Maidan, not allowing people in. There are all kinds of rumors that people cannot come in, people cannot go out. So it is a situation of siege. Both during the daytime and during the nighttime, people are in tents. So we're asking you, we've suggested a proposition for a resolution, and if you can help us, this would be a very good thing. This is a question of solving this problem in a peaceful fashion. You know that the politicians from Europe have had occasion to speak to us. We need your help, we need your support, and every single time there's a European politician who comes, it's very important, and it was important that you were first. And I hope that if force is used, that you will use sanctions, both in terms of the visa question and others. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now we'll open the floor to any questions. You feel free to address any of the speakers on the platform, and also Mr. Yashchenchuk, who's live from Kiev. We may have to pass through the microphone here, but feel free to address your question. Yes, please.
Peter von Kohl from EU Reporter. I would like to ask you the same question I just asked the Greens. What are you going to answer those Ukrainians who say, I don't care about politics, I care whether I will be freezing in the winter or not? Where do I get the insurance that my house can be heated? From Russia or from EU?
To whom do you want to ask the question? Mikola, do you want to ask this? The Yashchenchuk?
Я відповідаючи на це питання, хотів би сказати,
Giving the answer, I would like to say
мені здається,
that,
що
in my
не
opinion,
без участі, скажімо, сусідньої держави відбулося то побиття.
This, what we had, this violence, extenses in Maidan, was not without participation of our neighboring country, who gave an order to beat up the people on November 29th, 30th, and this will show how strong is the Russian influence on all the processes. So Yanukovych completely will have no chance to talk with as a civilized European world, he will have to work only with custom union, that we do not have any bloodshed. It's only because everybody understands what's going on, and everybody is going to work that nothing will happen further, and we're going to stand strong.
Un mot sur le gaz. Il faut savoir une chose, c'est que depuis 2010, le prix du gaz payé par les Ukrainiens à la Russie est le prix le plus cher de toute l'Union européenne. Le prix le plus cher de toute l'Union européenne, alors que les deux pays sont voisins, que les pipelines passent par l'Ukraine. Et qu'il faut savoir que le gaz qui passe de la Russie à l'Allemagne par la Hongrie, qui revient ensuite en Ukraine, ce gaz-là est 10 fois ou 20 fois moins cher que le gaz qui vient directement de la Russie. Donc ce n'est pas un prix économique qui est pratiqué par la Russie depuis 4 ans, c'est un prix politique.
It's not an economic price that the Russians are charging, it's a political price that they're charging.
Autre question? Other questions, please?
Autre question.
Any other questions?
We'll just give the floor to someone else if they want to ask a question, otherwise we can have a follow-up. Did you want to follow up then?
Thank you very much. I wonder why I'm not getting an answer to the simple question, how to ensure the Ukrainians a supply of energy here and now, not in certain years by EU, but here and now.
Mais en tout cas, the economic interest of Ukraine lies in a close relationship with the European Union. If you look to exports, if you look to imports, if you look to all the different sectors of the economy and of the industry, their interest is there. It's not by accident that the choice of the Ukrainian people is to join to have this agreement and this partnership with the European Union. And it's true that can create problems, certainly when the Russians are continuing to blackmail. And that is what they are doing, in fact, the Ukrainian people. But at the end, these people and Ukrainian people know very well where their interest is, that they have more chances for a good life, for wealth, and in a partnership with the European Union, linked to the European economy, linked to a market of 500 million citizens, and that is more a better future than one or other loose custom union with former republics of the Soviet Union.
I wish to add some moments on it. Look, Ukraine needs Russian gas as long as Russia needs money for that gas. 75% of Russian budget depends on oil and gas resources, which that country exports. So that's why it's not a charity at all. It's just business. It's just business. And as long as Ukraine pays the market price, it shouldn't be no politics involved. Although we see a lot of politics and a lot of bargaining, political bargaining from the Russian side. So the customs union simply means a promise for cheaper gas or oil, which not necessarily comes to the life, then some credits, which again, just said promised but not delivered, and some personal contacts behind the closed doors, which is not a democratic and transparent. So that's why I challenge a lot this idea that Ukraine is somehow a country which should be given any charity from EU or Russia. No, Ukraine should be reformed. It should be a competitive market economy. Then we will see normally paid bills for energy and other goods. So that's why let's see some political dimension of energy supply to Ukraine from Russia.
There's a question at the back, sir. Please.
Yeah, Paul Anderson from Europol TV. I just wonder, given Russia's ferocious, or at least what some commentators have described as a ferocious intervention in this political issue in the run-up to the Vilnius summit, what changes there should be, if any, or at least what message there should be from the EU to the Kremlin?
I think that the message from the European Union the last years on this issue, but also on other issues concerning Russia, and more important, the internal order in Russia, has been far too weak. We have the reality is of today that we have a political system in Russia who is not open, who is not fair, who is not democratic. New political parties have not entered the political scene for years. We have the different cases before court against politicians, democratic politicians, Navalny, for example, but there are also others like Nemtsov who have been put before court. So every time when there is a politician from the opposition trying to get support in the Russian civil society, yeah, the way they handle him is to put him before the court and then to block him in his ambitions. And we have not been bold enough in our language towards Russia. And that's also one of the reasons why the Russians are always going further. Now on Ukraine and tomorrow maybe on other fights.
I shouldn't predict this, but from my understanding, I mean, today's Ukraine might be tomorrow's Russia. And we have to see it as it goes. Russian opposition was welcoming very much Eastern Partnership agreements with EU for Eastern European countries. Why? Because it brings a lot of stability. It brings a lot of reforms, and those relationships we are looking forward. Democracy and market economy, by those agreements, is stabilized in all countries around. So that's why, with this in mind, I call on the European Union to sign up agreements, association agreements with Moldova and Georgia as soon as possible, maybe beginning of next year. With no delay, it will be very strong and I would say very necessary signal to pro-democratic forces of Russia.
Thank you very much, and we'll stop the press conference there. Thank you very much to our participants in Ukraine, Mr. Yatsenchuk, to Marielle de Sarnez and Nathalie Griesbeck from MODEM, and to our colleague, the Deputy Speaker of the Lithuanian Parliament. Thank you all very much.